Good evening. Welcome to the work session for the Village Board of Pleasantville. Today is Monday, May 9. Our first work session item is a conversation with Superintendent of Public Works Jeffy Connum regarding a series of projects and potential projects. I am going to share my screen. The first of them is the proposed improvement of the water course that runs along Lake Street. Shall I jump further to those drawings, Jeff? Is that the right thing?
Yeah. So what we've had here is over the years with the type of storms we've had, the existing retaining walls or stream bank walls have deteriorated. They were pretty much, some of them were drywall. Water's gotten behind them. The stone wall has eroded, has collapsed in some areas. And the main issue we have here is we have major utilities that run parallel to Lake Street, transition water main. We have the gas, we have sewer out on Lake Street, which pretty much all parallel the guide rail down by where PCPD is located.
Which is right down here. That's the bridge to the PCTV site, and here's Oakback Lane.
If that wall collapses, we would lose the road, we could lose our utilities.
Recording in progress.
Sorry.
In addition, we have water services, water mains that run perpendicular to the stream just above where PCTV is at the cottage school. There are two water mains there. They have become partially exposed. So the idea is to, once this work is done, we'd be able to get additional cover protection over them. And then just west of the bridge to access PCTV, the walls have started to erode and collapse, with water getting behind the stone and pushing them out. So I've looked at a couple options. One was trying to repair the wall. Very labor intensive. You'd be at the mercy of the weather, trying to mud all the joints, because that's the only way to do this properly would be to do a mudded joints on the wall. And then you also have the issue of getting concrete into a classified stream. Another option I had looked at was the use of gabion walls. While it's a good application, they can be expensive, they're labor intensive. And the aesthetics of that is not the greatest. What really works for us is I came up with this, it's a ready rock wall, it's a wall system. It's got a similar finish to what was used at Paul Brothers project, so it's a stone face. But they're about 3.5 feet in depth, various heights on them, and they get backfilled so that they will not erode. They will give strength to all the banks. It will provide aesthetic, looking like natural stone. And I think, Peter, there was, if you go to next, there was an elevation showing the various heights. So this is where this company ran along, and they vary from 2.5 to probably 4 foot in height along the whole project. And to do this, they truck in the block, we need a crane, we need to do remediation, remove the stonework. It's a project about $650,000 to do. And it's something that I know Alyssa's been working with me and working on trying to obtain a grant, so that would, if we can get some grant money, I think this would be a nice project to have permanent restoration out there.
So this would go, Jeff, for the entire length of the exposed brook, from where it emerges, under
This
the
would
park?
go from the pedestrian bridge, where the trail is,
Right,
to the west of PCTV, down to about 20 feet east. So where that pedestrian bridge is to the east there,
yeah,
down to about 20 feet beyond the culvert, both sides of the stream.
just 20 feet from this
It's
point
20,
down
30
towards
feet.
Broadway?
It's, everything you see in orange, both sides of the banks would be
Okay.
taken care of.
And is that far enough? We only need to go 20 or 30 feet?
Yeah, I went to where it's beyond where the wall has deteriorated.
Okay, so then these were your numbers.
And most of those numbers were, the Ready Walk wall that we received a quote, they were gonna provide engineering services. And then I did the fabric behind them, stone, some of it was some, but it's fairly accurate.
Okay,
What do we think the likelihood is of receiving a grant for this project?
Well, so right now we're submitting for FEMA's hazard mitigation program, and they have basically a ranking system, a point system. Really, Alyssa and I were talking about it last week. The feedback we get from FEMA is that they're really focused on providing grant funding to the neediest communities. And that is their top priority, but obviously there's a lot of money in the pot. And we're hopeful that, with public infrastructure and public utilities that are impacted, if the system were to fail, we have a pretty strong case to make. So, I think on the downside, you can understand why they're directing funds to the poorer, needier communities. But there are, some significant projects that are not in those locations that need help and support too.
Yeah.
well, I mean, and who knows, it's hard to handicap what our chances are, but I came back from last week's NICOM conference with a stack of paper that I just dumped on Eric with a long list of grant opportunities, many of which probably don't prevail for us, but some may. And on tonight's agenda, we're signing on a grants consultant
That's great.
who bird dogs these matters and then assists in crafting an answer for it. So, Jeff, at the point at which we might do this, is it a few months of work? How does that play out?
I'd say, yeah, I mean, the big, probably a few months, the biggest hurdle or the problem here is, removing the old wall. Once you get moving with that, it's like a block system, replacing putting the new wall in. It's, you can see the walls we have around the village, they stack, they interlock. So that would go fairly quick as long as, we have the material on site.
And how do you do that in a running water pit?
Basically what you would do is you could put down a type of sheeting, basically what we use, the plates that we use, you could just put them up to divert the water from your work area while you're working, and that would hold the water back, and just move those plates down as you get downstream.
Right. All right. There's always something to spend money on, huh?
Yep.
All right, item 2 on the list was Clark Street.
Clark Street is a unique situation. We all know that we get a lot of flooding out there. It's drainage from the Soldiers of Sailors Field down to Bedford Road.
So for reference,
Currently,
if folks looking, here's Soldiers and Sailors, here's the parking
Correct.
lot mid-block with the playground and Soldiers and Sailors over here, and then this way out to Bedford Road, right?
Currently, Soldier Sailors is actually in a hole. It's one of the lower spots out there. We've televised this piping system numerous times because of clogging. And it's, like I said, it's 10-inch clay pipe. Years ago, joints are offset so that any debris that gets in there will create some blockage. So I had a root survey prepared. I'm trying to follow the existing drainage line, but what I did in Clark Street is I pulled the drain to run on the curb line instead of being under the sidewalk. This will allow me to put, as you see, sort of in the middle of the drawing, 2 catch basins, because there's no drainage on Clark Street, so I can
Right here.
get additional, correct, I can get additional drainage on Clark Street, which would help get the water, instead of flowing all the way down to Bedford Road.
So then would you just abandon in place the old clay pipe?
The old clay pipe would be abandoned in the parking lot coming from Soldier Sailors Field to the, out of the parking lot would be replaced in the same trench, and then just bring it a little further out into the road there and convert that drain manhole to a catch basin on a flat top since it's in the driveway, and that would allow me to get some drainage there. The issue here is, as I said, this area is dead flat. If you look, I'm increasing the piping to an 18-inch, which will help, but the slope is at 1/4%. I am talking it's dead flat. And where this ties into the county drainage system on Bedford Road, then it actually runs back through the houses to another project we're going to talk about. This all drains down to that, we're talking about a proposed basin down behind the little tennis clubs, tennis courts. I looked at any which way to try to get this to drain out to get additional pitch. It doesn't, I mean, the only thing that was remotely feasible was to run it out to Manville Road into, have to dump into that basin on Con Ed, which I know we could not do. So this is the best thing that we can do. The other recommendation, if we move forward with this, is the playground at Soldiers and Sailors. I would recommend that that be relocated when they put new equipment out there, because you have the wood chips and the sand, and that is probably 20 to 30 feet in the proximity of the drainage inlet for this drain system. So in any good rainstorm, those wood chips, sand, get washed into the drainage system, which creates issues.
So where could the playground go?
I was actually looking, there used to be a pavilion structure over where the playground is on the other side of the park.
Closer to Ledge Rock?
Sailors. We could move it, same end, but just move it over to that side of the park.
Okay, and then you had hatched a preliminary estimate for this. 855, give or take. So is this work your people would do?
No,
It's too big a
as
job.
much as I have,
Right.
trusted my guys.
No, I understand. It's
Trusted
a
myself.
lot. So,
Running the drain line that flat, I think we need to get somebody that does this on a regular basis.
yeah, I agree. So which line item that I'm looking at now includes that? Or is that yet to come to add?
That was actually not in there, so I would.
All right, so you got to add that to the budget.
Correct, I'll get that updated.
Okay,
Sorry about that.
that's right. So what do we think? This project, obviously, each of these projects could and likely would be undertaken separately, but this project relates a bit to this proposal, right? Am I right?
Was that Peter? I'm sorry.
I've got the basin up now, so improving, did you say there was some connection between the Clark Street project and the creation of this basin? Or did I
Yes,
misunderstand?
This drainage comes down, if you look to the
Oh, where's this?
upper left, you'll see a manhole over there.
Up here?
got Just, yeah, right there.
Yeah.
The reddish pinkish color, there's a drain manhole. You have drainage coming from Clark Street, which is coming down to the diagonal. And then that's going to the left, there's drainage coming from Ashland.
All right, so just to give people a point of reference, Ashland Avenue is down here, right?
No, Ashland
Oh,
Avenue, that's Willow Street down there. Ashland Avenue is over to your left.
Here.
Correct.
Okay, and so these lots on Ashland are very deep. This is
Yeah.
behind the Ashland lots, and Bedford runs up here, right?
Correct.
So we actually own this property, which is a big sort of swampy forested area, right? You come down here and where's Willow?
There is,
Willow is down in
in
here,
that area, Peter, there are sewer easements, there's a sewer main.
right?
So, if we do this work, it provides cleaner access to get to the sanitary sewers.
Mm-hmm. All right. So in other words, the tennis club is over here, right?
Yes, it is.
And Willow is over here.
Down lower, correct.
So if you go down and are looking across the parking lot and tennis courts into the wooded area, that's what we're talking about here.
Yes.
Okay? And what would you do here? You dig this out a bit?
We would dig it out to see the magenta, the purplish colors.
Yes?
Would be proposed contours. We would do, it would be roughly on the southern side, it'd be about a 4-foot high berm. Around the back, it's only a couple feet. And the reason it's so high there is just for the freeboard protection of the tennis courts. And you would put a low flow pipe over to the east. You'll see there's 10-inch low flow pipes. So during normal storms, low flow storms, water would just drain through there through a small pipe. With the 4x4 outlet structure, you have a large opening on the top with a grate on it, and that would discharge to a 36-inch pipe into the existing stream that exists. So basically, you're just creating a large area. Would be about an acre in size, where we could retain water, detain water, and just have it released on a slower basis rather than straight flow through, which would help because this bowl drains down to the Seneca area and ties into by Lake Street. That the Nanahagan Brook there, so that all ties in at the confluence is right there by Seneca.
And then the alum plant's over here, right?
Correct.
So does this involve clearing a lot of wooded area?
According, when Dan Maris did the survey, the trees that you see there are the trees that are out there.
Those green spots are
green
trees.
circles.
So,
They're
so
the existing trees.
there are very few trees in the center area.
Correct.
The trees that fall within these magenta lines would be taken down.
Would be taken down, but, you know, there would be additional, you would get additional growth out there fairly quick.
So,
Which
and
is
in the
soil
end,
condition.
you wouldn't stop additional growth. It's not like you have to maintain this as a clear area. You've just created a contour, right?
Just creating a depression that would hold the water. If you get some growth, you know, once you get growth back, that would help also with absorbing, you know, retaining water.
So how much of an impact do you think this has on the adjacent neighbors?
Don't see really too much. Those lots, those houses are pretty far up.
Okay. And it is not like a wooded forested area. It's mostly open at the moment.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so I mean, this is really our best gambit to retain and slow down the flood of water that ends up headed towards Seneca and ultimately down to the Four Corners and Thornwood, right?
Correct.
And some of the water that ends up here is coming down from the hillside, Hayes Hill, all that, right?
Yes, that drain line is on the upper right-hand side. That comes down Hayes Hill, Bedford Terrace comes down to the catch basin on Bedford Road by the high power lines and drains down this way also.
Do you have a sense for how much this would help? Does it hold enough water that in a significant storm event it would help and reduce flooding?
It will reduce flooding. It will definitely help. Will it get a full 100-year storm? We'd have to go in and do some additional calculations on that, but it would definitely help, yes.
Do you have a sense for how many gallons of water this holds?
I have figured, I've done some incremental things. I'll get those to you.
All right, that's fine.
Up there in the office, I did.
That's fine.
I did an elevation storage curve.
So here was your rough cut for the detention basin.
I mean, this is something we could do. This would be fairly easy for us to do. And I have spoils at the yard from water main breaks and other works we have done. I have material that we could screen and bring over there.
And does this require, is it mostly building berms or do you actually have to dig down in the middle?
It's really just moving some material around, you know, to get the area fairly level, and then bringing in material for the berm. That's pretty much it. Other than that, it's just, you know, regrading the area.
Okay. All right. So that seems like a promising direction and one of the relatively few opportunities we have to create a space to detain water, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, Jeff, would you recommend doing this before Clark Street?
Yeah, I mean, they are tied together, but they are sort of independent because, you know, this basin, you know, collects a lot more water than just Clark Street. You know, it's taking Ashland, it's taking, you know, Bedford Road, like you said, Bedford Terrace. So it would have an immediate impact by doing this right now.
Okay. And this is mostly with your own forces, right?
Yes.
All right. Thank you for that. Now we're back to the plaza. Maybe I should zoom in here, right? For those who...
While I was out there today at the county bus, picking up at the gazebo, that's working out great. Go by and stop, people are waiting right by the gazebo, it's working out.
Yeah, no, the gazebo, that rearrangement and moving the stairs, I think, has helped a lot. So, if for those who may not have seen, the angled parking was established today
Oh, wow.
and is in use right now on the median side. Obviously, the angled parking on this side is going to await whatever the right moment is for the project at 70 Memorial. So the issue we confront is the question of whether we have bump outs for trees, right? That's the core question? Yes?
In front of 70 Memorial or where?
Well, so this was one proposal. You'll correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff. Here is the new gazebo. The steps are now on this side. The crosswalk across to a bump out, which aligns with the new public right-of-way route down to Cooley Street that is being built as part of 70 Memorial. So under discussion was the possibility of taking this parking space and turning that into a place for a tree and a planter, right? There's all this utility right under here, and that makes planting a tree impossible, right, Jeff?
Correct, you have water there, you have sewer and underground electric in that area, so putting any in-ground plantings is virtually impossible.
So this scenario would take that parking space and put a planter on it with whatever was chosen, an evergreen or something, right?
Correct, we could use those large planters that the Parks Department has started installing around the village and use those in those areas.
And then does this show a tree here?
We were talking about a tree and again, the utilities, so I think we put a planter, we have one over by the steps on the gazebo. So if we have one across the street would, tie in that.
And then there was discussion again, a tree in a planter of some kind down here. But again, absent that, this could look like this, right?
We could get additional parking down in that area, correct. And again, I think the best thing that, once we finish or 70 Memorial does their bump out, it won't take me long to do a temporary layout, so we can see what the striping and parking configurations would look like.
And do you think the sidewalk is wide enough to put one of those planters on the sidewalk the way we do on Wheeler?
No, the sidewalk is 4 or 5 foot in width. So putting anything there would be an issue with, number one, ADA. Secondly, you have the overhang on 70 Memorial, the building, because remember the building face, they put that on the property line. So they have an overhang there that's probably 3/4 of the sidewalk, and where the main entrance is actually extends beyond the curb line, but because of the bump out there,
Up here.
it won't. Yeah, it actually extends out past the curb, past the sidewalk and curb line.
Well, I will put in my 2 cents, which is that I think that it's worth taking up a little bit of parking space to have those planters just aesthetically, because having had to remove those trees from the median, and then with this very heavy building now, it's just very sort of it structurally it's much more intensive, and I feel like something to soften it a little bit would just be nice.
All right, so,
And then hopefully
I think
eventually we have the civic space that will also kind of balance it a little bit, but for the time being, it's all concrete basically.
I think, Nicole, that, the goal here is to do a bump out, but it'll be, the planter will be on top of the bump out.
Mm-hmm.
And we could get a small tree.
Right, no, I get that, yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I understand you're not talking about actually planting in the ground.
No, and my goal is not to have it all parking, that we would, have 1 or 2 bump outs to have as much green space as we can get without affecting the utilities.
all right, so the bottom line there is, and we had this conversation, you and Eric and I the other day, it's not a decision that has to be made right now, right? What you can mock this up sort of with some light striping at the point at which we're ready to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is, what do we think? 3 months ahead? Is that what the
70 Memorial was
folks think?
thinking they would be in a place to start working on their sidewalks in July.
Okay, so what that could mean is that this venture would be maybe in the fall, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or earlier.
Okay.
How long do sidewalks take?
Jeff, how long do you think it would take them to do that sidewalk?
Probably shouldn't take them more than a week to do the sidewalk, bump out, a week and a half for everything.
All right, so I mean, certainly by midsummer, end of the summer, they're done with the need to, they'll be able to reopen the sidewalk, and we could
Yeah,
put into
probably.
use the parking on that side.
Right. Sounds like at this point they're saying July-ish.
Okay. When are they imagining they're going to have people in the building?
That's a good question.
When could they
I
have
think-
people in the building and then take a few more months to make everything perfect?
I mean, I think
Right.
they were, last conversation I had, they were hopeful that they would be finished by the end of the year. That seems a little optimistic, but they are making quite a bit of progress, so
What about the building on the sawmill
that may be,
on the Leduca property?
The end of
that might be even a little earlier.
Yeah, they're thinking by October, November.
So I'm sure they're going to do it exactly when they say they will.
Yeah.
So, Jeff, just a shout out, I think this new plaza area and the relocated steps on the gazebo help a lot. It really feels much more pedestrian friendly, and it produces, for the first time in a long time, a day-to-day use for the gazebo for folks waiting for the bus.
Yeah.
Oh, it's very nice.
It turned out well. It was a group effort, had a lot of input from people, and the crew to help get it done.
Well, the new lights, the new sidewalks along the train station side, it really has made a big improvement, and I think, as we saw today, the addition of these angle spaces, I think, is another good step forward. Makes it easier to get in and out, reduces the tendency of folks backing out to block the other lane, and it also pretty much solves the problem of people trying to pull out and go the other way. So, much appreciated. All right. Anything else to ask or to say about Lake Street, Clark Street, Detention Basin, or the Plaza?
did you want to mention or discuss the RBAC? You want to wait on that one?
Well, do you have the report yet?
Don't have a report. I haven't paid them yet, so.
All right. Can you beat on them? I mean, I would like to get back to the neighbors first to have a chance to describe for them what that study has found. And then obviously to have a public discussion about what to do about it.
Okay. I just received a quote on the concrete pipe today.
Okay, great. So, I mean, the short version of a longer story, more to come, is that there appear to be some steps we can take that would be an improvement. Nothing completely eliminates the risk in that zone, but there do seem to be some opportunities. So, all right. Thank you, Mr. Econom.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks,
No
Jeff.
problem. Anybody have any other questions?
I don't think so. DPW is shipshape.
Indeed.
All right, thank you, Jeff.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Jeff. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Next up on our list, we had a follow-up discussion about the use of ARPA funds.
Right. So we talked about trying to get grant funding for these projects. Right now, without the labor for the Clark Street Drainage Project, this represents about $150,000 of capital expenditures. We are set to receive, I want to say, about $744,000 in ARPA funding. So obviously we can use it all on these projects, but I know there had been some interest in other types of programming. Obviously, you know, we're going to go after aggressively grant funding, but in the absence of that, we need to be prepared to find alternative funding sources. So wanted
So
to
you
bring
said,
this up.
what was that total you mentioned? I mean, I think you misspoke there.
About I wanted to say 744, but that
No,
may
I
be,
mean the capital things we just talked about.
845,000.
Right. Then feeding into that is the question of the flood risk remediation at the pool.
Mm-hmm.
We've had some further conversation with Bob DeBruin, and he's going to come back to our next meeting, is it?
That's right.
And you know, where we sort of end up with is for somewhere between $500,000 and $1.2 million, we can reduce but not eliminate risk. And if you look at the historic risk, the number of times this has happened, 2 in anyone's memory, it's no fun. It has the potential to knock the pool out of business during the pool season if it were to happen at that time, but the actual cost of remediation has been well below, probably below the debt service on the remediation plan. Now that said, can only remember this happening twice, but both times in the last 4 years, which causes one to wonder whether we're going to see it a whole lot more often. Obviously, plenty of reasons to think that might be the case, but I do think, and Bob has some more to say about it, that it is possible that we're better off self-insuring, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
have I accurately described that, Aaron?
Yeah, and he's going to present some data, rainfall analysis, and the like.
Well, particularly if some of the stuff that was below ground is now not going to be below ground.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, the good news about the 2 times this has happened is that it hasn't knocked the pool season out in a big way. The first time it happened was in the off season. The second time it caused us to lose the last week of the pool, but at least it was in the last week. If this were to happen, 4th of July, you would have the potential to have lost the pool season or potentially weeks of it, right?
Right.
I mean, the cleanup is one thing, but if debris is sucked into the filters and all of that, and you need parts and all of that, there remains the risk of losing quite a bit of time. Now, one thing we can talk to Steve McCunis about is whether the new location of the equipment, as David said, but also the equipment itself, can have some sort of fail-safes that make sure the pump isn't running if it senses water coming cascading over the dam. I don't know whether there's a way to do that.
Right.
But
Or,
if you
and also protecting the intake. If there's things we can do to upgrade the steel or whatever in the intake so that.
I mean, the problem we had the first time that this happened is that all this debris and silt got washed into the pools and then sucked into the pumps.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So I think the issue there, probably, leave it to the engineers, is if there's some way to make sure that when that's about to happen, the pumps turn off, maybe that's...
Is it a crazy thing to ask if we couldn't send somebody to turn off the pumps if we know that this is happening?
Well, it's just, who knows when it's going to happen, right?
Well, no, I mean as it's happening. Or is it
You
like
could-
instantaneous, you get
Yeah.
overwhelmed and then it's dead?
Or I'm wondering if it's something one could do remotely too.
There's an app for that.
Seems
Nicole, you have the app
possible
this weekend. Don't make any plans.
I mean, one interesting piece is that we've also talked about the idea of, as we've mentioned in the past, we've had a long-standing practice of with a manual process of removing these boards, actually lowering the level of the pond with the thought that it creates a form of a detention basin and reduces the risk of flooding. Bob's statistics indicate that it feels better than it actually is, and
He
it probably
doesn't
It's all
doesn't
coming
matter.
from underground, right?
Right.
Well,
Did
yeah, and
we
it's just
run by
such heavy volume.
Michael's question about the wall? Did you
So
have anything to
yes,
say about that?
Same story. Just a question of how much money one is willing to spend. Obviously, at one point in this process, I was somewhat inclined to think that we shouldn't kick the can down the road and we should buy as much protection as we can. But upon further consideration, I'm now a little bit of the mind that I'm not sure that we should spend much of anything on flood mitigation, just because the recovery from flood mitigation is comparatively cheap as compared to the $1 million+ cost of producing flood protection, which by Bob's clear report last time around would have achieved nothing in an Ida-like storm. It would achieve quite a bit in lesser storms, but in an Ida-like storm, it wouldn't be any different than if we hadn't done it.
Oh, wow.
Right.
That kind of changes things.
Right. I mean, the issue being it's going to overflow in an Ida storm, where 8 inches of water falls in a short period of time, and it might happen a short time later, but it's going to happen anyway, right? But in a severe storm that isn't at that level, it could protect us from trouble. The question is, how much trouble are we looking at, and we don't know the answer to that.
Right.
So, all right, back to the ARPA question. We're in a circumstance here where, obviously, all of the ARPA money could be expended on these projects automatically. And then the other thing, and Eric and Jeff and I and John Lynch and his team from the water department took a little visitation to the water tanks last week, preparatory to the idea that we may be looking at a longer term project to replace the water tanks.
Mm-hmm.
And that project is likely north of $10 million. So that's a staggering project and a big planning effort, because it would mean taking a tank out of service, knocking it down, building a new tank, putting the new tank in service, taking the old second tank out of service, knocking it down, building another tank. And during that time period, the careful dance to make sure, A, we have enough water to meet the demands and to meet the emergency requirements in the event of a fire, and all the while maintaining the health department standards for clean water. So it's a little bit of a daunting venture. So, all right, I throw that out there simply to say that would be a a water district expense, but that's on the radar screen.
Is that something that the state has any likelihood of?
You know, there are all these water grants, and again, you know, obviously this grant consultant, more on that when we have the resolution, is in the business of paying attention to all that stuff. I came back with a bunch of references that have been put together by NICOM, and I went to an Environmental Facilities Corporation presentation. Those folks not only give some grants, but also give subsidized bonding rates to some kinds of projects. It's all competitive. The question is, does a place like Pleasantville achieve success in grant applications of that kind? So, and there are obviously plenty of places with very, very severe needs. I mean, the state, as you may have noticed, just gave Mount Vernon $150 million for a sewer project,
Right.
that being a big city with very deteriorating sewers, and without the money to do it. So places like Pleasantville, obviously much smaller, and different need structure. I think there's a chance we're going to get some money. I don't think no one's going to swoop in with $10 million.
Right.
So, at any rate, I mean, the interesting thing about our water tanks is that they're both, much money has been spent on them at various points, including a pretty big overhaul that happened about, 15 years ago. But there are two tanks. One of them is actually a tank that was put on top of an open cistern at a time when, a century ago, the village's water system came out of an open cistern without a cap on it. So there's a tank built on top of that, and then another tank built adjacent to it that is an entirely metal tank. And quite a few years ago, we went through this whole process of draining them, sandblasting the inside, painting them with a special material and a bladder put into them and all of that. It's a big deal. Scuba divers, the whole 9 yards. But just as you might imagine, obviously it's careful business in order to maintain the proper water standards, but also this is huge stuff. I mean, just Jeff pointed out, for example, that in the course of the design of this, you essentially cannot change the elevation of the tanks because it's the elevation of the tanks that's providing the pressure that pressurizes the whole system throughout the village. And if you made them significantly higher, you would increase the pressure unacceptably and create water main breaks. So, complicated business.
Yeah.
So at any rate,
And is it 100% chance they need to be replaced within a certain period of time, or what's
there's a 100% chance they need to be replaced,
some point,
but I don't
yeah.
know. I mean, I don't know that there's a date certain. We have one tank, the one that is welded to the cistern, that has been leaking at a relatively small but frustrating level. A lot of effort was spent in that last renovation to try to stop it without success. It doesn't leak until it's up to a certain level inside the tank. The pressure builds up and then you get some leaks. I don't think there's any cause to think that that's any kind of a crisis, other than you wish it wouldn't happen, and it gets pointed out by the health department. But we're talking about pressurized water being forced out of a small opening somewhere. I mean, we're not talking about a cascade of water, we're just talking about a leak. So the other tank isn't doing that, but they are
and do they have to
pushing
be
100 years old, right?
Do they have to be reconstructed at the same time?
Well, you have to do one and then the other, because you have to keep...
No, I understand that, but do you have to do one and then the other the same year, or can you wait 5 years and do the next one?
I mean, that'd be a question to ask. Jeff thought, and is likely right, he's on the line still, I guess, that it's a very awkward site. You would do the farther one in first. Am I right, Jeff?
Yes, you'd have to do the back tank first. And I mean, we could wait the question is, the back tank at this point is okay. Like you said, they're both the same age. The one in the front has got the weep holes that are leaking. So that's the one that the health department is going to want want to be done. So I'm sure they would, understand if we, staggered them within couple years, no more than 5 years. I'm sure we could probably work that out.
But you're pretty sure we have to do the back one first.
Yes, we do. Just,
Right. The logistics are such that you wouldn't want to be having to go around a brand new tank with the logistics of getting a replacement in there, right?
and to keep, as you said, to keep the elevation of the tanks, for pressures, etc. The current tanks are about 78 foot in diameter. To keep the elevation, and the volume, the new tank up front would go to probably 92 to 94 foot in diameter. So you'd be, taking up a lot more real estate, so you wouldn't be able to get a crane around, to do the lower tank.
And recognize also, it's a bit of a complicated site to get to at the end of a residential street, up the top of a hill.
Where is this?
It's if you look at it's on a hill way above the pool.
Okay.
If you look at the boundaries of the village, there is a funny little sort of dog-leg piece that extends up the hill and includes in the incorporated area of the village of Pleasantville the area where the tanks are. So it looks like sort of a lollipop stuck onto the village. And obviously that was the result of somebody's forward thinking at the time that was done. So anyway, it's worth a trip for all of us. So I think
We should go look at it.
we should make an outing so you have a sense for it.
Yeah.
I tell you, not only a sense of the scale of the project, but also a sense of the complexity of what goes on and what our water department has been extremely good at managing. When you think of the whole process of the water arising from the Croton and Catskill Aqueduct, depending on the time, through the Millwood treatment plant that we own a piece of, filtered, pumped out of there,
Yeah.
and gravity fed through the interlock, and then ending up in the tanks in the village of Pleasantville, and then back down throughout the service area with the required additives, and we have chlorine injection equipment and all of that. There's a lot going on to make sure that when you turn on the faucet, water comes out, and that you can drink it,
Yeah.
which you can.
Yeah.
So,
No,
all right.
one of those things not to be taken
So we
for
could touch
granted.
on that again, maybe at the end of our regular meeting here.
But we're still talking about the
ARPA,
ARPA. Yeah.
right? 757. So
So
let's go back to that.
Okay.
Unless you wanted to add something now.
Well, no, the only thing I was going to say is that I would like to reserve, sort of $25,000 for programs to get people back to work or to work, job retraining, and potentially, if we don't spend that, using it to subsidize one or more children to be able to have after-school care, who come from, again, SNAP families, families that receive food assistance.
Okay. All right, so 7:58 in 2 minutes we'll start.